Okay, shalom everybody. I'm Yair, and today we have a special Zoom webinar with people from our community here in the United States, and more importantly, family members of the kidnapped families that we're going to get to learn their story, and more importantly, hear what we can do from the United States, from all over the world, to help get them back home ASAP right now. My name is Yair, like I said, and I represent several organizations, including Hope for Israel Alliance, which is an international organization of expats, mostly Israelis living in Canada, United States, Europe, Australia, and more. And really what this organization is standing for is to support Israel, support the Israeli people and the democracy, and fighting anti-Semitism anywhere in the world. I also represent, in Daphne as well, the American Jewish Medical Association, which is a large national, huge national, relatively new organization to really try to support healthcare providers within this last year plus of anti-Semitism that we see in healthcare. So I want to introduce, first of all, Daphne and Michal, and I promise that I'm not going to embarrass them, but everybody who lives in the greater Philadelphia knows them because their passion, their true core, I don't know why specifically they have been so into the whole kidnapped family, and but they have been nonstop for the last 14 months. I'm sure that everybody in the greater Philadelphia knows all that they've been doing, bringing people together, arranging events. Daphne's three kids are actually, daughters are in Israel. One of them is just finishing the IDF service. And really they're unbelievable in terms of how much they care. And just to give one little anecdote, one of the events in the museum, when we brought back, I came with Michal and Daphne to bring back the big signs of all the people. And when I helped take them out of the car and put them in Michal's house, I accidentally put one of the pictures facing the wall. And Michal, almost in Cherdat Kodesh, rearranged it and took the pictures and set him up in the right way, facing the right way. And I think that to me, it was like such a testimony that how much they really care. They really do. So Toda, Michal and Daphne, for all that you're doing and for being here. I want to introduce Yotam, and then I'll pass it along to Daphne and Michal. So Yotam is the brother of Nimrod Cohen. And Nimrod Cohen is one of the four soldiers who were kidnapped from the tank, together with Omer Neutra, who was just announced, unfortunately, dead a few days ago or last week, Zichrono Levracha, and Shaked and Oz. So really, Nimrod Cohen is the one survivor who is still alive that we must bring home right now. So I'll pass it on to Daphne and Michal. Again, this session is going to be recorded. We're going to have a total of 60 minutes, up to 75, depending on the Q&A. And usually there's a lot of questions, good questions and comments. So probably until 2:15 Eastern time. And again, this session is recorded. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. You will communicate with us via the Q&A in the bottom of the screen.
Thank you, Yair, and thank you, Yotam and Zahiro. I will just briefly introduce Zahiro, Shachar Mor, who is the nephew of Avraham Munder. Avraham is the youngest brother of Zahiro's father, and Avraham was kidnapped on October the 7th, and later was killed or murdered. Zahir will get into that detail later on the discussion, and his body was brought back to Israel later. So I'll pass it on to you guys, and we can get started on. We thought of initially starting with you telling us a little bit about Nimrod and about Avraham, just what kind of people they were, and tell us a little bit about them. And I'll put some pictures here. So Yotam, do you want to start telling us about Nimrod, what kind of person he is?
Hey, can you hear me good?
We can hear you well, yes.
So, yeah, just like you said, Nimrod is my younger brother, 3 years older than him. Nimrod has a twin sister, Romy, which is also now during her military service. He serves in the Air Force. My brother, just like me, joined the Armored Corps in the IDF at 18. He managed to serve almost a year before the 7th of October, before being kidnapped. He and his teammates were stationed at an outpost on the southern part of the Gazan border, between the two kibbutzim, Nir Oz and Nirim. And he, alongside his teammates, there were 4 of them, just like you mentioned, the officer, the commander, Omer Neutra. Just 2 hours ago, me and my mother, we came back from the Shiva, and we went to the family in Ra'anana. So Omer Neutra just a few days ago was declared deceased, alongside with Oz Daniel and Shaked Da'an. And out of the 3 of them were kidnapped and murdered, only Shaked body was returned a few months ago. And out of the 4 of them, my brother is the only one, the only teammate was kidnapped alive, and we believe is still alive. And we're doing whatever we can, me, my parents, and my sister, to bring him home alive.
Thank you, Nimrod, and thank you, Yotam, I'm sorry. And Zahiro, can you tell us a little more about Avram?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Can you please pull up? Yeah, this is the picture. Abraham Avram Munder is in the center. He was 79 when he was kidnapped from his house in Nir Oz. He was kidnapped apart, separately, from his wife. You can see here my auntie Ruth, from his daughter Karen, right to his left, and the only grandson Ohad that you can see here was 9 years old. He celebrated his 9th birthday while in captivity. The 3 of them, my auntie Ruth, my cousin Karen, and their grandson Ohad, were released on the first day of the hostage exchange deal. Ro'i, my cousin Ro'i that you see on the far right, was murdered. His house in Nir Oz, in Kibbutz Nir Oz, they all lived in Nir Oz. Karen and Ohad live in Kfar Saba. They came to visit the grandparents for the Simchat Torah. Ro'i lived like 400 yards from his parents in the kibbutz. He was 50 years old. He didn't have kids of his own. He was a very dedicated son to his aging parents. He took them to hospitals, to doctor appointments, and really very dedicated, devoted, and loving son. His house was torched, and while he was fleeing out from the smoke, he was shot in his front lawn. Abraham was taken on the backside of a motorcycle to Gaza, actually to Khan Yunis. Ruti, Karen, and Ohad were taken in his club car to Gaza. Abraham Avram Munder, everyone called him Munder, but he went by his last name. Munder survived. Apparently, on his way to Gaza, he fell from the backside of the motorcycle. He's 79 years old. He used a walking cane. He had very poor eyesight. Actually, he was carrying a long-term PTSD injury from the Six-Day War. He was one of the paratroopers fleeing Jerusalem, and he was injured in a place called Givat Tachmoshet, if anyone heard of it. Very famous battle in 1967. He was injured then, and he was in a very severe state of stress for the past 10 years from all the alarms and aerial sirens that he was confronting living in Nir Oz. He lived in Nir Oz. He went there, I think, 1960. So he's more than 60 years. His home is there. Well, he survived, and he was in a tunnel together with 5 other hostages. and apparently the IDF bombed the neighborhood or some neighboring place. The IDF admits that they knew that there may be hostages there, but still they bomb, as they do occasionally, bomb without taking precautions. Some of the bombs thrown over there were bunker penetrating bombs, American bunker penetrating bombs that have a CO gas residue at times that can cause death in tunnels due to suffocation from CO. This was the case with Sergeant Ron Sherman, who was killed from an IDF bomb, the CO residue, when the IDF tried to take out some Hamas leader called Ranor. Renoir, I don't remember the name, but this was, and we think that the death of my uncle could be from the same reasons, because apparently together with the 6 bodies of the hostages, 2 of their captors' bodies intact were found on the same spot, and their captors died from the CO gas. So even if their captors would not have killed them, they 100% would have died that day from the CO gas residue taking over the tunnel that they were held in. Yeah, Abraham was, he was a gentle, very shy man, very into himself, very loving, very dedicated to his family, to his community, to his kibbutz that he built in 60 years. The last 10 years with all the Tzeva Adom and his own PTSD condition made him extremely scared, extremely cold. He didn't leave the safe room for 2 years. In Nir Oz, they had 10 seconds of 10 seconds. Once they hear the alarm, they have 10 seconds to get to the safe room. And he, of course, couldn't move anywhere in 10 seconds. It took him a lot more to just, get up from his chair or whatever. So he just lived in the safe house. He didn't come to my father, his brother's birthday. I remember a few years ago, because he was too scared to get out of the safe house and go to the car. And what will happen if during the ride there will be an air siren? So he was completely into this whole cycles of war. Every time there was, and there was plenty of times, sometimes 3-4 times a month, there was missiles over at the south border, and we would always call Nir Oz and see how are they. And up to the October 7th, it all went, pretty well. 9 years ago, my uncle worked in a factory called Nirlat. It was the kibbutz's factory, petrochemical paint factory, and his co-worker, they worked in the warehouse together. They were 2, like managers of the warehouse. His co-worker got hit by a missile 9 years ago and killed on the spot, on their spot. Okay, Abraham was not working that shift, and after this occasion, he didn't leave the safe room for 2 years. Okay, and this was his life. And actually, the last part of his life was his worst nightmare coming true. this was, his worst fear for 10 years at least of this, repeated rounds of aggression, and then, some quiet, and then aggression again, and violence, and these cycles, repeating cycles, didn't do him good, didn't make his condition better. And I think, he survived the Gaza tunnels for more than 4 months, actually. He was injured while he was taken. He fell from the bike, and he was injured, and he was getting better. He healed from his injuries. It was a long, long time. Okay. Very gentleman, very shy man, very into himself. He was a part of every singing choir in the vicinity. He has a beautiful, beautiful voice. He would so much love to sing, the good old Israeli songs, and yeah.
Thank you.
What more can I say? I can
Yeah.
talk for hours, but I think.
Thank you so much, Zahira, for, really making us feel what kind of a person Abraham was, and how devastating it is to, like you said, that his worst nightmare, after he had PTSD already from the 6-Day War, have basically just came
materialized in front of his house,
Yeah.
and his kibbutz was burning, and he was taken out on the bike, and he saw houses burned down, and people shot, and bodies all over, and
that's just devastating.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And so thank you for sharing all that. I did want to ask, and maybe Nimrod, and maybe Yotam, you can tell us a little more about what does the life of a hostage family look like? How do you wake up in the morning, and how's your schedule look like? And I'm sure, your whole day focuses on just advocacy and work around that, but we'd just like to know a little more about that.
So, I think the basic level, or the first understanding you must realize that everything changes. On the morning of the 7th of October, we realized that the way we lived our lives is not going to be the same. And I think there are multiple dimensions to this. On the most basic level, your family that you used to have. I mean, I used to have two relatives, one sister and one brother. And for the past 14 months, I only have a sister with me at my house. For my parents, one of their children is missing. So on I think the most basic level, the most day-to-day, something is physically missing inside our house and inside our lives. I think the next level above that is that everything that we do in our day lives, from eating to taking a shower to even watching a movie or drinking a cup of water, you do it and you understand that while you're doing this, my brother is not able to do so. Every time I take a shower, I think that maybe my brother hasn't taken a shower for more than a year. And it's becoming a sort of an equation. You live your lives relative to your brother, not relative to yourself. Everything we do with the understanding that what we are doing, my brother hasn't been able to do for an impossible amount of time. And I think that after these two basic principles, once you understand them, everything else changes. Because if my brother is being captive in Gaza and he's not able to do anything he can, lives under life-threatening conditions, everything that we are doing, everything that we must do, is in relative to that. We cannot just live our lives and leave him to suffer and to die there. And so every second of our lives, we think, how can we how can we advocate? How can we push forward this notion? Who else can we talk to? Where else can we talk to? Where in the world we haven't been yet? And so everything that we're doing for Nimrod for more than a year. For example, right now, like I said, my sister, Nimrod's twin, is in the army because it's her civil duty. My father, for the time being, is in Paris, in Europe, and he's supposed next week to go to the US, to Florida. And 2 months ago, I was in Paris and in Brussels, and my family has been traveling the world for the past year. We've been meeting with elected officials, state leaders, politicians. We've been interviewed in media channels, in newspapers, in podcasts and broadcasts. We've been joining demonstration and protests, both inside Israel and outside Israel. And so everything that we're doing, the basic premise of our personality has changed ever since the 7th of October. I have become a public figure, but just because of the fact that my brother has been kidnapped. And people recognize us in the streets, both supportive and some criticize us. But the people we are today and the people we've been before the 7th of October, both on behavior and both on mental state and how we've been living our lives, are totally two different things. And we have to go to sleep and wake up with the understanding that maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe 2 days from now, maybe next week, maybe we'll be the next family to get the knock on the door and to find out that it is our lives that are being ruined this time. It is our world that are going to shatter even more. And it's a sort of paranoia to live with. That the angel of death hangs on your doorstep and can knock basically every second. Like I said, we've been today to the Shiva of the Neutrals, and they've been telling the story how about a week ago, their designated officer from the IDF, who's been accompanying them for the past year, was knocking on their door in the US, telling them the horrible news about Omer. So even in the other half of the world, you cannot escape the bad news. And so every single second is a second of paranoia, when you're simply feeling that you're not doing enough. There is more to be done. The fact that they're not here means there is more to be done. And you have to live with that from day to day. And this is it. And there's nothing more to be said.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
If I might add,
Sure.
I know the Cohens. I know Yotam and his parents, and they are a shining example of a family that are active. Okay, they are active, profoundly active all across the world and in Israel, fighting for the life of Nimrod, of course. Not every family can do this. A lot of families are so into their own grief that I think the Cohens are a great example of courage and ability and resolve, okay, of taking to doing what they need to do and finding out new ways to do, because and there, not many families are like this. Okay, most families, I don't know, the large majority of the families, most members of the families are into themselves. They cannot do anything actively out front because of the situation. Because some of the families, like in my case, we had hostages, we had survivors coming back, and we had killed family members. Okay, so, and just and another thing, the older generation, like my father, my mother, my uncle, and my auntie, my auntie, which is Abraham's younger daughter, younger sister, they're all devastated. The older generation gets it the hardest. Okay, and for really, I think it's logical reasons. They have so much invested in this kind of this narrative, this situation, this people, and they're devastated. The younger you are, maybe you are more flexible. But my father, personally, my father's dementia got a lot harder ever since October 7th, and it's like collateral damage. You cannot. What can you say about this? He had dementia before, and he just got very, very worse, and logical again. But what can you do? So there are a lot of circles of injuries, of hurt, and not everyone can go out and travel to Paris and speak for the hostage as much as the Cohens do, and so they're quite an exception in this way. Don't you agree, Yotam?
We're doing our best.
Yeah, you're doing good. And another thing I want to say, like if you want to better understand the situation of the families of the hostages, is Yotam touched it. It's the fear of getting this knock on the door, knowing that you didn't do enough, that urges you to go and do whatever you can, even if something you think ahead that it's futile, but this fear of not doing enough. And me for one, it's a completely different case, of course, but once we received the message of Abraham's death, we felt, we didn't do enough. So of course, we couldn't, we felt the failure. We felt the utter failure of, my uncle, my elderly uncle needs help, and we couldn't help him. Whatever we did, we shouted. I went to the United Nations. I went to, to London, to DC, to New York, to the General Assembly. I was arrested in the U.S. Congress for shouting during Netanyahu's speech, and we failed. And this feeling of failure will not change. Will continue till the day we die.
Just listening to both of you is really, blood chilling. Like, I feel that I can't breathe when I'm listening to both of you. Before I turn it back to Michal and Daphna, I just want to comment as a perspective an Israeli, for those people who are on this call and will watch this call who are not Israelis, know that just a couple of words about Yotam, because we had a long conversation a few days ago. So Yotam is also, was recently in the IDF. He was an officer, and he was a deputy commander of a unit of tanks as well. So he's very much involved, and he was in Gaza as well, and eventually was released. When you're released from the army, if you're an officer, it's an extra year or 2 years in the army. But afterwards, most of the Israelis, they have their thing. They need, we say, lenakot et harosh, to clean their head. He was planning on traveling, in Asia and South America, being out for a few months, for a year, then coming back, do the SATs, psychometry as called in Israel. And, he's brilliant. He's planning on a career as an engineer, most likely. And just to show you how this reality has impacted him specifically in the last 14 months. He's been released from the IDF. His life has paused. Now, finally, he's trying, in addition to doing everything that he can in France, in the United States, and webinars like this one, and podcasts, to, tell the story and bring them back, do everything in his power to bring them back. Now he's also trying to start living, and he's studying as we speak to the SATs. And so again, thank you for taking a pause from all of that you're doing, Yotam. But really, this is, to me, it's just an example. I was thinking about it last night, how his life, should be normal and the same pathway as so many people are on pause because his brother is alive and captive underground, and he's going to do everything possible to bring him back home. Daphne and Michal.
Thank you for this. Really, it's hard to really perceive how your life have changed. Not even talking about the fact that many of the hostage families have stopped working and don't have incomes or support, and they need to spend so much money on traveling and all that. So this is totally a life-changing and the devastating thought of the knock on the door is just heart-wrenching. So thank you for...
Sorry, just an interesting fact. A lot of family members since October 7th, a lot of mothers stopped cooking. They cannot stand and cook. My mom, she cooked every day, every single day of her life. On October 7th, she can't cook. She buys food. Okay, she orders food. She can't cook. And I know some other. This is just an example. The mundane day-to-day work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just can't do it because it's too mundane in a way, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just their lives change completely.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of families who stopped celebrating Shabbat because their loved one are not back home. One question that we have for Yotam is, do you guys know anything? Did you get any information? Did you get a sign of life or any sign from Nimrod?
So I'll say that in the past year, we've been getting, let me basically explain this. Every hostage family has a designated IDF intelligent officers, which accompanies them through this horrible period, and every information the IDF receives gets to the family through this intelligence officer. So my family, and again, this is very personal and differs from family to family. We've been getting multiple life signs from my brother. The very recent one from July, which is more than a few months ago, which might seem like a lot of time. I think it's about 5 months without any life sign for my brother. But compared to, I think, most of the families or many other families which did not receive any life sign and simply have to, I think, live on the basic hope, which is a lot. We also live on hope. Every family hope for things to turn up, I think, as positive as they can. And also for us not receiving any life sign for several months, we have to maintain the hope that everything is going to turn up okay, and Nimrod is alive and well. But at least we have something to comfort us, that we know that he survived the 7th of October, which is the most crucial, I think, step to survive. Because on a bigger sense, most of the hostages who survived the 7th of October managed to survive other time in captivity. Of course, there are few horrible examples, just like Zair's uncle Munder. But surviving the 7th of October for us is a very good sign about Nimrod, considering the fact that his other teammates did not manage to survive the 7th of October. And every time we've been getting life sign, and I think that every life sign comes to us about a month apart from each other, is like another shot of adrenaline to us. I think maybe you can think about this like like food or water. And this is the food for us. This is what we consume to stay alive. Every life sign, every call from the intelligence officer to my mother, to my father, to me, it's like having another good meal, and it gives us the strength to continue fighting, knowing that indeed he is alive. And again, from the last life sign was from July, which is a lot of time ago. But I think it's the best we can hope for now. And we're still waiting for any new life sign to turn up. And we're asking every week, all the time, and just waiting for another round of good news.
I have a follow-up question to both of you, Zahiro and Yotam. It may be a little bit early in the conversation, but we're a group, both people, the 45, 50, 60, hundreds of people who are going to be watching this webinar and similar webinars from the United States and Europe. We always ask ourselves, other than going to the protests and bring them home, rallies, the ones Michal and Daphne, for example, arrange in Greater Philadelphia so frequently, we always try to find out and think what else can be done. And many people have reached out internally to each other recently, just in the last week or so, because there's signs. I mean, there's always a hope, but is there something else that is happening that maybe is now yet another opportunity? We heard the message of Trump that he really wants things to happen until he's in January. We saw the movie of Matan that the Hamas released. And there's also a lot of talks in the last few days of Qatar mentioning, that there is some sort of a reinitiation of talks, negotiation between Hamas and Israel. And more news, even what happened in the last 24 hours in Syria, this domino effect that everything is interconnected. So my question, I guess, to you is, do you feel that now we're facing an opportunity, and what can we do from the United States, from the world, to help?
I'll go first. Yes. I can tell you, yesterday the Hamas released the Matan Tzangauker's video, which was, like segue from Yotam's words, like this is a sign of life after a long time that the Tzangaukers didn't get any sign of life. And you could see a lot of people came up to me yesterday and told me, wow, this is like Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven. There's this, and the forest will echo in laughter. And in the recording, the other recording, not the studio recording, the Robert Plant asks after this, does anyone here remembers laughter? And this is what we felt yesterday. We felt joy. We felt happy for after such a long time of horrible, harsh news, week after week, day after day, we got a sign of life, and people were elated from this. Okay, and yes, I think, my humble opinion, of course, I think there is a reason to be optimistic. For the death toll is too big. Everyone, even the parts of the population that were pro the war, and the death toll is too big. The atrocities in Gaza are too vile. There are too many things. We must stop this war and bring them back. The war is the main obstacle for bringing them back. This is, the Hamas's demand from day one, from October 7th. Stop the war, you'll get them back. And since Israel has been reluctant to stop the war for various reasons for the past year, I think now, in a very macabre way, the body count is too big on both sides, okay? The death toll is too big. The aggression has gone out of hand, completely out of hand. So I think there is a reason to be optimistic that Trump's tweet or truth or what have you really changed things here. People think differently, and very cautiously I can say that even the old Netanyahu's base is starting to think that maybe this war could be ended. Okay? Maybe we have hit them enough. We have taken enough revenge on the Gaza infrastructure so we can stop this war. Even in Netanyahu's base, there are some talks, there are some general, I don't know. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm much more optimistic than I was last week. Okay, I think Matan Tanzauker's sign of life really helped in formalizing this, and yeah, I hope for the best because it has been too long. And by the way, I just want to add, sorry, Yotam, that Yotam's brother is alive 60 miles from me. Okay, he's right here. It's not some far away. He's here, and the IDF are near Nimrod. Is just probably underground. Okay, it's such a frustrating situation. Yeah, sorry, Yotam.
So just regarding the question, I think we can look at it. I think there are two separate things to answer. The first thing is whether or not something is coming up. We've been hearing lately about recent development. Qatar is getting back into the negotiation table, and we've been hearing the message from the President-elect Trump. We as the families, we've learned not to trust and give much weight to these rumors. There have been multiple rumors in the past year, every couple of months, every couple of weeks. There are new talks about new headlines, breaking news, the negotiation talks are continuing, or breaking news, new developments. And so we've learned to lower the expectations regarding an upcoming hostage deal. It doesn't mean that we're not optimistic. We are. We know that it's only a matter of time and the deal has to happen eventually. But we cannot live in this emotional roller coaster, going from ups to lows. We simply cannot live that way. It's too stressful for us. And regarding the other half of your question, what can people do? What can the simple citizen do for us? I think that throughout this struggle, even in the times that we're more close to a hostage deal, and even in the times where there's no hostage deal in sight, I think it's always important to show and to demand elected officials, especially elected officials, which should represent us because it's their job to represent us, the people. Elected officials in Israel represent us, the Israeli citizens, and elected officials in the US represent the American people. And these elected officials must know always that the majority of the people, and that the people is one people, whether it is the Israeli people or the Jewish people, wants the hostages to come home. Once the government and multiple administrations, both Israel, US, wherever in the world, must do whatever they can and even pay some high prices or costly prices to get the hostages home, because it's their obligation as our representatives. And I think that, like you said, I think something big is going to happen in the next month. I think that President Trump coming into office or getting into office is good because it's a new blood. I think when you change the players, the game also changes. I think that Trump is able to do some change, is able to close a hostage deal. I think that our prime minister, will listen to him, and I think that especially in this time, after more than a year, before entering winter, which medical professionals estimating that the hostages, living hostages, such as my brother, may not survive the cold of the winter. And now, with what we've been hearing in Syria, and we know that Hamas has been devastated, and after the ceasefire in the north, that especially in the next month, in the next couple of weeks, it's more important for people to contact. I think that the best way is to contact the officials. In the end of the day, the officials represent the people, and their power is coming from the people and by the people. I think that everybody in their own community and in their own state or country has a power to influence, whether on public grounds and whether in private. And I think that we must always show the administration that the most important thing to do right now, which they're unable to do, they were unable to do up to now, is bringing the hostages home.
Thank you. Thank you both for reminding us all how important it is to continue advocating, to continue, even here in the United States, sending messages to officials and coming out to rallies and participating in Zoom meetings like today's. I do want to read one of the comments here by Kim Lippitz. She's one of the more active, community members here in the Philadelphia area. And she wrote, and I wanted to quote her, "I am profoundly moved and appreciative of you both speaking in such a raw way. I wonder if families are being supported with appropriate resources from the government to navigate through this. And I speak of financial support, but more so emotional, mental health support. I'm so moved you are sharing today." So thank you, Kim, for the question. And you can, you can go, either of you.
So I'll say regarding the financial support, there is some support for first and second circles of the hostages. For example, our family are getting some financial aid from the government because, like Zahira had mentioned, many families, I think the majority of the families are unable to work and are unable to do, I think, basic everyday duties. Some families have basically collapsed and stopped, operating as a family. And there is some support regarding the mental state. I think the best way to help us mentally is to bring the hostages home, which is what we've been telling. I think there is no other way to help us mentally. I think everything else is simply lying to ourselves. The most, I think the most productive way to help us, both financially and mentally, is simply bringing back the hostages. And we as a family, we as families want the government and our officials to focus more on bringing back the hostages and focusing their efforts, which they're not been doing so far, to bringing back the hostages and not giving us money or other, I don't know, psychologists.
I can say that Yotam is, of course, first circle. I'm not first circle. I didn't get anything from the government. I'm a cousin. I'm a nephew. My father did get some financial aid, being a brother of, but then it stopped, of course, when Abraham was declared dead. Psychological, we get nothing from the government, me and my family personally. And we're not expecting anything from the government. What I can say, and I just want to frame it, maybe just go back a second to the previous question. I wanna here's the thing. The Biden administration was a complete failure in regards to the hostage situation. You can say Benjamin Netanyahu manipulated the Biden administration. You can say whatever you want, but the fact is that the Biden administration for the past year has been arming Israel in Israel's campaign in Gaza, has been, standing together with Israel, vetoing everything against Israel, 100% backsiding Israel for the past year, arming Israel, sending the IDF the actual bombs that killed my uncle, okay? And I, for one, think Biden was a complete failure in this regard. So maybe, I'm not a Trumpist in any way, and I'm not an American citizen, of course, but I think President Trump coming to office this January will change everything, because for some reason, Netanyahu knew how to manipulate Biden into, Israel's, into Netanyahu's interest. And I don't think he will be able to do so to Trump that easily. I hope. Okay? And touching this point, I have to stress out that the American military-industrial complex has a say, has a place in this campaign in Gaza. Okay? And this is something that you all can do something about, because the administration's stance is bring back the hostages, stop the war, 100%. But for some reason, the military-industrial stance is also taking place in Americans' interest, feeding this cycle of violence. And this is something that American citizens could write to their constituents about. And this is something, this is my plea to you, okay? Help us stop feeding this violence with American bombs.
Let me ask a follow-up.
Please.
Sorry. It's a follow-up question to what you said, because there's different opinions. But I'm sure that, unfortunately, in the last 14 months, you have both been, seeing and hearing American Jewish people. Daphna, Michal, and I are working very closely with Jewish community members on WhatsApp, on whatever in-person groups, and we hear different opinions. And I think the big, kind of before what you just said, Zahiro, there's a question backwards, because the assumption of the American Jews, and this is what they know, is that we support Israel in always. We support Israel, and that's kind of like been the case since the Holocaust, perhaps. And the government of Israel is elected democratically, and the government is the body that basically works with all the resources that we don't have, the normal people, even Israelis, in terms of exactly the intelligence of what's happening. Maybe the Hamas is not destroyed yet. So many people are asking themselves, what is happening in Israel? All these clashes, people with different opinions. Why can't we just trust the government, because they are working with the IDF, intelligence, etc.? And if they're not ending the war, there must be a reason that we're not ending the war, because maybe, Hamas can do this again. What they have done, the most awful thing that we have seen in the 21st century, the rapes, the murders, the kidnapping, without it even getting into it, is unbelievable. And maybe the war is not over. And I'm telling you, both of you are very raw and open, as Kim said. And I'm open with you, because many people feel that, if the government of Israel is not ready to terminate the war, maybe the goals of the war has not been accomplished. Maybe there's something else that they're reaching out by destroying. Maybe if we do some sort of an agreement, this will jeopardize Israel yet again in the future. So what are your thoughts about this?
You're completely correct. The American Jewry has been, ever since the establishment of the state of Israel. They are standing 100% with Israel, and standing with Israel actually says standing with Israel's government. We are not our government. The government has gone astray. You can see this vividly because they are not returning our hostages for a year. They have a deal on the table ever since October 8th. They have been sabotaging and manipulating their way out of a hostage deal ever since the first one that was forced upon the Israeli government. If you don't understand this, continue to support Israel's revenge campaign in Gaza, continue to feed the war. You are harming the Jewish people, and you are definitely harming the state of Israel. If you can't make the distinction at this time, after 14 months of not returning the hostages, I will not persuade you in any way. But if you have eyes, ears, and a heart, and you see that after 14 years, the government of Israel has done nothing, okay, not nothing, has done little, has not done the utmost to bring back the you know, the numbers are getting smaller by the day, by the weeks. Okay, by now it's 100, and I just came back from the 101 funeral in Be'eri on Friday. The numbers are going down, and they are getting down because my uncle could have been brought back had the hostage exchange deal would continue and not being blown on the last day by the Israeli government. This is a fact. Now, if you don't know the fact, we can educate you with the fact. You can educate yourself with the fact. But for the past 14 years, the Israeli government has been trying to minimize the plight of the hostages, to minimize this ordeal, and started a war campaign in the north, campaign in the south, everything within its power to postpone the decision about the hostages. We know this, everyone in Israel knows this. There is a vast majority of people in Israel who are appalled by the actions of this government. However, the current government in Israel knows for a fact, a lot of the leading figures know that the upcoming elections, the people would kick their asses out. So they are postponing the election, and they are doing their best to change protocols of war. What's going on in Israel right now is a complete offense to every sense of democracy. So if you want to stand with Israel, you have to understand that the Israeli people the Israeli government has gone astray, and the history books will tell this. There is no excuse to what the Israeli government is doing right now. Is taking our loved ones and their misery and use it as an excuse for a revenge war in Gaza, for reestablishing some settlement in Gaza. And there's 20% of the Israeli people that really want it and really believe in it. And when you look at it from America, from outside, you can say, this is just the fringes of society. No, this is the fringes of society together with the finance minister, together with the prime minister. They are all in it, and they are robbing the public funds right now as we speak, because they know that the next coming election, they will be kicked out. So they are establishing their power base, and they are preparing for civil war that could come in Israel. This is an opportunity. Everyone in Israel are talking about this. The rapture is too big. There are people in Israel who really believe that this is a miracle time, that this is a grand opportunity to resettle Gaza and recapture Lebanon, and no one will disturb us, and we will not be bothered with, general bilateral conventions anymore. And with the United Nations, we don't care about the United Nations anymore because we got hit so hard on October 7th that we don't care anymore what other nations say.
Thank you, Zahira.
so
Thank you so much. One of the questions that I have, or actually I wanted to say something first. It's amazed me that families who are loved one got returned either at the last year deal, or was rescued, or unfortunately their body came back to Israel, are still coming and fighting for the other hostages. And that's something that always amazed me, where they get their strength to keep fighting even though their loved one came back. I wanted to ask you, when Avram's wife and her daughter and her grandson came back, would they now at this stage, are they starting the healing process after Avram was returned? Where are they at with the whole situation?
Fortunately for me, I can answer this really easy because my cousin Karen gave a speech last week on Heritage Square, and she addressed this question, like, how are we coping after getting back?
Yeah.
And her answer was, we are not okay. We are not okay. Okay, I'm not talking, and even especially now after getting the message for her father's death, 2 months ago, they are not okay. They have, and they have been in captivity for 49 days. Think about 420 something days. Okay. They have, profound fear woven into their fabric of reality. And
so the healing
they are
did
not
not
okay.
even start. The healing did not even start.
My cousin stated specifically, the healing cannot start while there are still people in captivity. The people that came back from captivity are deeply connected to the captivity experience, of course. So they are deeply moved and deeply they are feeling this, very profoundly and very deeply.
Yeah,
I can see it in my cousin's eyes and actions. Of course, it bothers them. It disturbs them. It's for them much more than us, maybe, because they have been there. They have lived this reality. So this unimaginable reality for us.
Yeah. I think that some of them may even feel guilt for coming back, leaving behind some of their friends or people whom they were captive in captivity with.
Correct. I can tell you that nobody talks about it, but there are some suicides, not from people that came back, but from people that were saved during the Nova Festival. I know young people over there. There has been several suicides. Okay, even without being taken into captivity, the guilt of seeing your friends being killed in front of your eyes sometimes, and knowing that it's trivial decisions, take a right turn or a left turn that kept you alive in this situation, is very hard to live with.
Let me ask sorry, let me ask something. I wanted to talk to you, Tam, for a second. So I want to ask you, how is the rest of your family doing? How is your father doing all of this? Basically, living day to day, trying so hard, going all over the world. He's kind of became famous in Israel, and also everybody has heard about, Nimrod Cohen's father and all that he has done. And also I want to ask you is, how is the connection? Maybe you can tell us something about the other people who are still in captivity and, kidnapped. Are you communicating? The families are basically in touch nonstop and supporting each other, like you, like your father, your sister, others?
I think that we as the hostage families, we've developed bonds together. I think we became at a certain point one big family. Some more, some less, but at the end of the day, we support each other as much as we can because we're in the same shoes. Regarding my father, I think just like I said before, where we find something to do, we're doing it. Where there's something to be done, of course we're going to do it. Just like this, for example. If I have spare time and something comes up, it's stands for granted that I'm going to take this opportunity to further as much as I can the release of the hostages. But I want to clarify something in regard to your previous question about the Israeli government and what's been going on in Israel. And I think that I can give my unique point of view. Just like you said, at the start of the war, on the 7th of October, I was an officer in combat, in active service. And for the first 2 months of the war, I've been both inside and outside Gaza. And I've been fighting along with my troops and with my unit and company. And after several months, I finished my service enjoying the public side of the fight, both in Israel and outside of Israel. And I think that when you look at this, at what's been going on in Israel from the outside, especially from the US, it's very hard to see how the timeline has been developing in the last couple of months. What's seemed to be at first a very justified and just war in Gaza, we as the IDF, we as the army entered Gaza hoping to bring back the hostages and bring retribution to Hamas for all the terrible things that they have done to us. And I think that what started as a just and righteous war, after a couple of months, became a senseless. And I think that by this point, for the past couple of months, and I know this both from talking to senior officials and both for my friends who are still in active duty, that the war, especially in Gaza, is not going anywhere. Soldiers keep on dying on the same places, for conquering the same places and same area where they've been operating a few months ago, which they keep on leaving and returning every couple of weeks. I think that from about May, which is before we enter Khan Yunis, which was the final draft of the hostage deal, which is the same draft that is on the table ever since May up to now. Speaking of the return and release of all the hostages, which eventually result in the end of the war in Gaza. And what we've been feeling, at first the hostage family, but I think that by this point, the vast majority of the Israeli people see this, is that, and I think it's hard for people outside of Israel to comprehend, but at some level, the Israeli government is deliberately avoiding a hostage deal. And I'll explain why. We, as a family, as a hostage family members, we have many meetings with seniors, both officials in the army, high-ranked officers, and both the Minister of Defense, Knesset members, ministers, both in Israel, and we've been talking to prime ministers and senior elected officials, both in Europe and in the States. And we've been hearing basically the same premise, that there is a deal on the table, and nevertheless, the Israeli government refused to sign a deal. For I think the past 3 months, every other week, there is a poll, a public poll on all the big news, the big broadcasting channels, and you can see that every single week, the most majority of the Israeli people, about 70-80% of the Israeli people want to end the war in Gaza and want to do a comprehensive single-phase hostage deal to bring them all and finish, I think, the hell that we are experiencing in Gaza. Because as long as the war continues, hostages are dying, soldiers are dying, and I think in the end of the day, some people care more, and some people care less. But I think that in the end of the day, it's not less important. Even Gazans are dying, and outside Hamas terrorists, which should be dead, there are still civilians there. And I think that at the end of the day, we as the Israeli people want to return to a period of peace and want to rebuild and rehabilitate. And I think that the other side, and I do believe there are innocents on the other side, I think they want to return to their lives too. And I think that for us as human beings, it's not less important.
Mhm.
And from what we've been seeing and we've been hearing, both from the previous Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, and the Chief of Staff of the IDF, Alevi, that there is a deal on the table and that Hamas is basically destroyed, and it's a guerrilla organization operating on very basic units on the field, which is no connection to one another. And we've been hearing this for the last half a year, last 6 months, from every general in the IDF, that the price of a hostage deal is a price that can and should be paid. Everything that the hostage deal brings on can be reversed if needed by the IDF. Everything can be reconquered, and every terrorist released, or every terrorist who is still alive after the IDF leaves Gaza can be killed eventually, which a thing that cannot be said about the hostage who is killed. Every soldier that dies cannot be brought back to life. Every hostage who is bombed or executed will remain dead no matter what we do. But a released terrorist can be killed only if we choose to do it.
Thank you so much.
So just a finishing sentence. As long as we postpone the end of the war, and as long as the Israeli government chooses not to end the war, the price that we are paying at the end of the day increases. Because as the time goes on, more and more soldiers are being killed, and more hostages are being killed. And you can look at the economic side of things. The government is losing money financing the war. And the price that we're going to pay at the end of the day is the same. The same amount of terrorists are going to be released, the prisoners. The IDF is going to leave certain places in Gaza. But as long as we continue, what we are getting as the Israeli state, as the Israeli people from the hostage deal is being reduced.
I want to thank you both for sharing your stories with us today. It's very important for all of us to hear it. Unfortunately, we can't ask any more questions because the time is over. But I want you guys to know that Daphna, Yair, myself, and the whole community here in Greater Philadelphia. We are dedicated to keep supporting you guys. We'll do whatever we can to keep their names, their pictures, their stories in our minds all the time.
Yeah, just one sentence, please. This is what gives us hope. You know, feeling the sentiment, the empathy, the love from the people. This is what gives us hope. This is what gets us the strength and courage to continue this battle. Okay, and this is a holy battle for saving people's life. Okay, and you can see this on the demonstrations on the streets, on webinars like this. You can see the people that the love coming from them, their caring and their understanding of the situation. This is what brings us courage. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's what
Thank
we
you.
always say to people, that this is so important to you guys, and we're doing it both for you and also for us, because we all need to heal. So thank you so much. And I just want to remind everybody, next week on Sunday, we're going to have the quiet demonstration in white. This is what we're doing next week. And like I said, every week we're trying to do something. So we are hugging you from here, from Philadelphia. Stay strong. And let's hope that
Hopefully
this
it
will
come
end soon.
Yeah. There's a window of opportunities now with all that's going on in Syria and everywhere. Maybe that's the time to get all the hostages back. It's a
things change.
Yeah. So we're praying and we'll continue doing everything in our power to help you guys to send our positive vibes. And thank you for joining that Zoom today. It's super important for our community.
Thank you all.
Toda Rabba. Big hugs to all of you and hang
Bye,
in.
everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.